But if I could invite you, and I'm going to tell you a cute story, because when I went in to teach the women in jail, and I started a brand new class, and I walk in and every one of them was crocheting. I was standing in front of the room and the whole room is crocheting. And at first I said, am I in the wrong room? Is this a crocheting class? I mean, I really was like thrown by that. And they looked at me, they said, oh no, Cathy, it's okay that we crochet because it helps us listen better. It helps me focus better, or what they're able to listen better. And I was going to take that on, but because they were brand new class, I thought, okay, all right, no problem. Everybody can crochet. You sure it's not against the rules? Because I don't want them to get in trouble. They said, no, the correctional officer said it's okay to crochet. So then I proceeded with the class, and about the third or fourth class, so I'd meet with them once a week for an hour. So about the third or fourth class, I came in one day, and all of a sudden I started to realize most of them weren't crocheting anymore. In fact, nobody was crocheting. And so I asked them, I said, did you guys get in trouble for crocheting in class? Because I really didn't want them, because that could mean they could cancel the program. I mean, you always have to be careful in a situation like that. And they said, oh, no, Cathy, this is weird. I don't need to crochet to be able to listen anymore. A lot of them started sharing that, and we never talked about listening. But as the class proceeded, they stopped crocheting. Isn't that interesting? And they were able to sit still and be able to listen without having to. So I talked about how you could be doing something that helps you. And I see that it can help people settle down and listen, and it can be helpful. But it's not the crocheting that was helping them. It's that they would slip into listening and then assign it to the fact that they were crocheting. Or somebody, when they do their gardening and they talk about, oh, I get so relaxed when I do my gardening. Well, actually, it's not the gardening that's giving the relaxed feeling. It's that we slip into that nice feeling, and then we assign it to the gardening, or we assign it to taking a walk, or we assign it to being with our grandkids. But actually, that's coming through us. It has nothing to do with what's outside of us. But if we set it up that way, then that's what we believe. So people say, I have a colleague, Sandy Crotch, she used to talk about the only time she could really get relaxed and calm was to go take a walk in the woods. So every weekend she would drive to this park nearby where she was living, and she would walk into the woods. And it was like therapy for her. I mean, and if she missed a weekend, she was off the whole next week until she learned the principles. And then she realized it's not being in the woods that was giving her the relaxed feeling. It's just that she gave herself permission to relax, and then she attributed it to being in the woods. And again, I don't want to take things away from people, but since we've been doing this program in 3PGC, and Christine Heath talked about that, how we can kind of think, well, I'm listening to people speaking while I'm washing the dishes or whatever, when actually you're not listening and you're going to miss out. Or potentially you could have a life-changing insight while you're knitting, right? That could happen. But in the meantime, just try it out. Now, if you can't hang, I had a woman one time in a training I did. This is in London, and she was in the front row, and she was feverishly taking notes. I mean, just really writing. So at one point on the break, I went up to her and I said, I notice you're taking notes, like you're taking a lot of notes. And she said, yeah, I have to do that. I said, well, what do you mean? Oh, Cathy, I have to do that because I don't want to miss anything. And so I said, well, actually, every time you keep writing notes, you are missing, because you're so busy doing the notes, you're not hearing what's being said. And she's, well, Cathy, no, I have to do it this way. And I thought, whoa, so she really needed to be taking notes. So I thought, it was a little distracting for me because she's in the front row, she's just fighting away. So I thought, okay, let her be. Well, over the next few days, guess what I noticed? She had the notebook on her lap, she had the pen in hand, but she wasn't taking notes. She was sitting there listening with the pen in hand and the notebook on her lap or on the desk, but I know she wasn't doing this kind of urgent note taking. So I went up to her at some point. I said, I notice you're not taking notes like you used to. And all of a sudden she goes, oh, you're right. She didn't even realize it, and I thought, oh, I shouldn't have brought it to her attention because now she's going to freak out, want to take notes again. But so again, it's amazing. And I get very restless. Like, since we've started this new program, the first session was 2.5 hours. And me sitting there listening to other people, I started to get restless. And I thought, whoa, that was interesting for me. Like, oh, wow. I started to, so I had to kind of get settled in, you know, I had to kind of get settled in because I noticed I couldn't get settled in. So, this is just our humanity. This is our human condition. But if you want to have an impact or connection or hear something at a very deep level, as best you can, if you could just be present to another human being, that is going to work. That's where the connection is. That's where the impact is. So I just wanted to say that. And again, I love knitting. So if you feel like you need to knit or you need to sew or you need to do, I mean, I'm okay with that, but I'm just pointing us in a direction, and just notice when we do get restless or we do get distracted and not make a big deal about it, but just notice how that can easily happen. I mean, it's happened since we started. It's happened since we've started. Your mind will wander. So I just thought that would be, I don't know, I just felt a need to talk about that.